The story begins with our protagonist waking up in complete darkness. Disoriented, he wonders where he is and if it is still night, looking for some way to turn on the light. However, he finds nothing. Suddenly, a crack appears in the midst of everything. It opens up and reveals an immense forest. Confused, the protagonist wonders what he is doing there and why he can't move. At that moment, his stats become visible. He discovers that he is a dragon egg. A voice informs him that his status window has been opened, allowing him to see all his current stats with numerical values. To make things clearer, the voice adds that the explanations of his stats and items are provided by the skill Divine Voice, and that it can also alert him when his stats change. The protagonist asks if this is a game, but the voice replies that it cannot provide explanations of that nature at level 1. Then, he asks who it is. Once again, the voice responds that it cannot provide explanations of that nature. Tired of this answer, the protagonist asks who he is and where he is, but the voice repeats the same thing. He gets irritated and shouts for it to stop saying that, but accidentally ends up falling from the tree. Upon hitting the ground, the voice informs him that he has gained the skill Fall Resistance and the title Clumsy. The protagonist is offended by this, but has no time to think, as he starts rolling towards a lake. He barely manages to save himself. Upon seeing his reflection, he discovers that he is definitely an egg. Confused, he exclaims that nothing makes sense, and that he cannot comprehend what is happening. Once again, the system explains everything. He is a dragon egg, a rank F monster, a descendant of a dragon, and if his shell breaks, he will die. Moreover, he is imposing and has low intelligence due to his underdeveloped brain. Therefore, rolling is all he can do. The protagonist tries to defend himself, but the system continues to speak and says that, while he can become a fearsome dragon over time, the egg is considered a gourmet delicacy. After all, it is a common practice among adventurers to destroy any dragon egg they find. However, they consider it dangerous to approach in case the dragon mother is nearby. This leaves the protagonist even more confused. But at that moment, he starts rolling downhill. As this happens, the system alerts him that his roll skill has increased from level 1 to level 2. Immediately, the protagonist looks for the new function acquired from leveling up and discovers that he can now steer and turn. Thus, he races down the path at high speed, but accidentally falls from a great height. Again, the system informs him that his fall resistance and clumsy skill have leveled up. Seeing that he now has only 3 hit points left, he decides to rest. Hours pass, and at night, he comments on how good it seems to take a break. He recovers his HP, that is, his hit points, and without further ado, decides to move again. In the meantime, I emphasize how strange everything is, as even though he is now an egg, he will eventually have to hatch, which means he will become a dragon. Of course, he doesn't even know how to get to that point. He assumes it's like an RPG, where he needs to gain experience to level up and then evolve or something like that, which also means he'll have to fight enemies, something he doesn't want to do. After all, he is just an egg. At that moment, he sees something behind a tree, approaches, and realizes it's an insect. He checks its stats and discovers it is a shadow worm with the title Egg Eater. The creature notices the protagonist and, as its title implies, crawls towards him trying to devour him. Thus, a chase begins. The protagonist looks for a way to defeat it, thinks about attacking, but seeing that the worm has more HP than he does, he knows that if they collide head-on, he will die. Spotting a precipice, he has an idea. He heads there and, when the worm lunges to eat him, the protagonist dodges and, with a jump, pushes it into the abyss. Resting on the worm, he wonders if he won, but at that moment, the creature rises. The egg pleads for it to surrender, and the worm complies, ultimately falling dead. The protagonist wonders if it is really dead, as he no longer sees any movement. The system alerts him that he has gained 12 experience points. Additionally, the title Wandering Egg grants him 12 additional points. The protagonist understands that this functions like a game, and the system announces that he has leveled up from level 1 to 5, reaching the maximum level for evolution. Before this, the system shows him the ways he can grow, as a baby dragon or as a dragonette. Not knowing which to choose, the system describes the dragonette. It is a kind of small dragon, but still larger than a bear, and has a breath of fire. In contrast, the baby dragon has very soft flesh and is quite weak. It has short claws and fangs, but possesses great potential with multiple evolution paths, although most end up being hunted by adventurers or monsters. The baby dragon leaves the protagonist feeling depressed, and he prefers the dragonet for being more balanced. At this moment, he feels hands touching him and a voice repeating for him to become stronger, saying that only one path opens before him, the path to the top, and that great expectations rest upon him. The protagonist wonders if this is a divine voice. The system informs him that the divine voice has leveled up from 1 to 2. He assumes that the voice appeared because he mentioned the balanced dragonet. Keeping in mind that only one path will lead him to the top, he thinks that the baby dragon has more potential and can evolve into various types of dragons, while the dragonet has fewer options and may become stagnant in its evolution. Thus, after much thought, he confidently chooses the baby dragon. We then see its shell break, from which legs and a tail emerge. The system remarks that, thanks to his title, Son of the Dragon King, first, the resistances of level lower than 5 are reinforced. In addition, he gains the skills Dragon Scales, Baby Breath, Whistle, and Bite, transforming almost like a Digimon. His statistics increase drastically, but his life points and magical power are still not at maximum. This means that even after evolving, he needs to rest. Before that, he thinks of thanking the caterpillar, but feels hungry for some reason. She seems appetizing to him. The protagonist understands that this is due to his dragon instinct and that his body urges him to eat her to heal and be able to fight. At that moment, the divine voice reiterates that he must grow stronger, and with no other option, he consumes the caterpillar, roaring in disgust at the horrible taste. The next day, the dragon awakens and goes to see his reflection in the calmer lake. He realizes that he has been reincarnated in another world and is now a kind of dragon hatchling. Furthermore, the world seems to function like an RPG. He can gain experience, level up, and evolve. However, for some reason, he does not remember who he was in his past life. He knows he was human, but cannot recall what he was like, what he did, or even if he was male or female. Behind him, he hears more creatures like those from the previous day, beginning the hunt for them, gaining more experience points and progressing from level 1 to 3. At this point, the dragon decides to test his baby breath, blowing out and devouring the insects, managing to level up from 5 to 7. After much attacking, he earns the title Striker and the skill Dragon's Fist, causing an enemy to explode with a single punch and leveling up from 14 to 15. After finishing, the dragon remarks that he will soon reach the famed summit. However, hunger returns, and he can only eat the same as before. Just remembering that makes him feel nauseous until he spots some mushrooms. Out of curiosity, he tries them, roaring again. After a while, we see him drinking water because the mushrooms were poisonous and made him vomit everything. Thus, having learned his lesson, the system announces that he has acquired the skill Poison Resistance and clumsily leveled up as well. Next, he ventures deeper into the forest in search of something to eat that isn't insects. Then, he sees a gray wolf, and after checking that its stats are lower than his, he decides to hunt it. First, he uses Dragon Breath and finishes the battle with a Dragon Strike. Consequently, we see the roasted wolf. The protagonist approaches and realizes that the beast emits a barbecue smell. Excited by this, he decides to roast it a bit more. In this way, he obtains grilled meat, tastes it, and confirms that it is delicious. In the afternoon, he hunts another wolf and levels up. While cooking, he comments that it seems he could evolve again upon reaching level 25, with only 5 levels left to go. At the moment he thinks he is getting used to his lifestyle as a dragon, he hears slightly distorted voices. The little dragon recognizes them as human voices and, quite excited, goes to check behind a tree. He discovers that they are adventurers. Thrilled, he considers introducing himself, but remembering that he is a dragon, he begins to hesitate. Still, he recalls that he is adorable, so he doesn't believe they would do anything against him. Before anything else, he checks his stats and realizes that they are not stronger than him, although they still have a numerical advantage. After a brief internal debate, he finally decides to introduce himself. Thus, he steps out from behind a bush, saying he is a nice little dragon, and starts dancing while asking what they think and if they don't feel like hugging him. The leader of the group tells the girl to step back, for in his eyes the protagonist is an evil dragon. He unsheathes his sword and, using a skill, inflicts a wound on the dragon's chest. The protagonist falls to the ground, feeling pain. Then, the mage casts a spell that paralyzes him. The dragon feels his sensitivity fade away, and then the system notifies him that he has acquired the skill of magic resistance. Our protagonist tries to escape, but the spell holds him back. He wonders if they see him as an enemy, or perhaps as food. Calling himself an idiot, he questions how he managed to convince himself that a dragon could become friends with humans. Remembering everything he had to go through to hatch from that egg and evolve, he exclaims that this sucks, and that he doesn't want to die. Using his last strength, in tears, he pleads for their help. The woman steps in front of him and asks the adventurer to wait. The dragon sees that she is trying to protect him and, as he closes his eyes, feels a warm hand. Realizing that the girl is using her magic to heal him, although he doesn't hear her very well, he understands that she asked if he is okay. He doesn't know why she is helping a dragon, but he feels grateful. The other adventurers also do not understand her, and they just go their way. The dragon observes the girl's statistics and sees that her name is Miriam Miliana, a terrestrial human. Her hit points are fine, but having healed her, she barely has any magic power left, and yet she did it to save him. Little by little, the dragon feels the paralysis fading. Maybe Miriam will leave when she realizes he is okay, but for now, he decides to stay quiet a little longer. Because of this, the system warns him that he has obtained the title of liar. Suddenly, when Miriam talks to him, he obtains the human tongue skill. The dragon understands that the higher this skill levels up, the better he will be able to understand her, and he eagerly awaits to learn this soon. However, he hears a roar and the screams of people. The whole environment turns red and hostile. The dragon knows this is something bad, as it clearly indicates a very strong enemy, and surely the other humans must have died. Miriam is about to go after her companions, but the dragon stops her, telling her not to go because she won't be able to do anything. Besides, she no longer has magic power and won't be able to use her healing spells on them. Miriam knows this very well, but still decides to go. The dragon tries to follow her, but still suffers from paralysis, hitting his own leg to move because Miriam won't be able to beat whatever has appeared. Even so, if the dragon joins the adventurers, maybe he can do something. Thus, we see him running as fast as possible to find Miriam, but he ends up coming face to face with a rock dragonette of rank C with 197 hit points, while he only has 38 of the 72 he possesses. Putting that aside, he looks for Miriam and sees her trapped underneath the rock dragonette. However, he makes too much noise and is noticed by the creature. The dragonette turns around and starts approaching slowly, letting out a roar, causing our protagonist dragon to fall to the ground, looking up at it, unable to do anything against that. The rank C rock dragon tries to stomp on him with all its might, but the protagonist uses all of his energy to dodge. Due to using too much force when jumping away, the protagonist can barely stand up. Realizing his own mistake, he regrets not joining Miria's group, believing that if the four had worked together, they might have had a chance against that beast. But now, completely alone, he is unsure if he will even be able to leave that place alive, let alone defeat the rock dragon. Being well below the necessary level, every cell in his body screams for him to hide. And when the rock dragon lets out a deafening roar, he is finally overwhelmed by fear and hides inside a bush, trembling, peeking out. He sees that the unconscious Miria has only 6 hit points left. Still, the protagonist feels relief, as she is still alive. The rock dragon, unable to see the protagonist anymore, turns back to attack Miria, leaving him wondering what he should do next. If he doesn't save her, she will likely be eaten alive by the monster. So despite his fear, he gets out of the bush. However, at that moment, the mysterious hand of the divine voice stops him from moving. He then hears the divine voice again, which continues pleading for him to flee, claiming that otherwise he will be roasted. But he doesn't care. He was once human, and as a human, he cannot abandon an innocent person. So, he lets out a loud roar to dispel the fear and charges directly at the rock dragon. The monster tries to stomp on him, but by dodging, the system rewards him with the title of King of Evasion. He notices that the old man who had joined Miria's group is at 0 HP, and, as unfortunate as it is, there is still another person alive. Thus, he desperately tries to save both Miria and the other member. He provokes the rock dragon, hitting it several times and causing the monster to chase him, but that turns out to be a mistake, as the creature uses an ability called Tremor that hits him even from outside the monster's direct reach. As the dragon approaches and is about to use the ability Bite, the protagonist reacts cleverly by shoving a fireball into the creature's mouth. However, the rock dragon survives and immediately enters a recovery state to restore her HP. Meanwhile, the protagonist picks up Miria and runs away, leaving the other companion behind as he has neither the time nor the strength to save him. After taking Miria to a safe place, the protagonist notices that her HP has dropped again from 6 to just 3, making him question if this is due to blood loss. Her status indicates that she is bleeding and conscious. He then tries to use the recovery magic Rest, but it doesn't work, perhaps because it is a self-recovery ability. Thus, he decides to focus on getting the girl back to her people, believing that only humans will be able to save her life. However, he doesn't know the path she and the group came from, so he follows the faint smell of humans and carries Miria out of the forest. Along the way, a pack of gray wolves is attracted by Miria's scent, and as a result, they start to chase the protagonist. He faces the beasts with all his strength to protect Miria, and by the end of the day, he is out of energy. Nevertheless, he continues to push himself and manages to bring her to a village. With no one in sight, he begins to roar loudly in hopes of drawing attention. Some humans appear, but they obviously believe that the protagonist is a beast trying to harm Miria. With no way to communicate, the humans start to attack him, realizing that as a dragon, he would never be able to make them believe he is not dangerous. He places Miria on the ground and flees, receiving a new title from the system, Little Hero. A few days later, Miria regains consciousness after receiving proper treatment and realizes she is at Marielle's house. Marielle explains that she had to use a powerful white magic to save her life, and Miria thanks her. What truly bothers her is knowing who brought her back to the village. So, she asks Marielle if it was the other two members of the group, the old Grants or Da. However, Marielle reveals that Grant's lifeless body was found by the villagers the previous day in the forest. Visibly shaken, Marielle calls Dun a fool for provoking a dragon. As for Da, she explains that her body has not been found yet, but she believes it has been devoured by another monster. Realizing that she was the only survivor, Miria feels extremely guilty and regrets not having stopped Da from challenging the rock dragon. She bursts into tears, and Marielle tries to console her by saying it wasn't her fault, but that doesn't help at all. All Miria can remember is how brave Da was. She recalls the day when Da truly got angry for the first time. That day, Da got into an argument with one of the boys from the village. The fight started because the boy said that Da would never be able to fight and defeat a rock dragon. The boy seemed so confident because he knew that the last time Da had encountered a rock dragon, she had lost her courage and fled. Da insisted that this was in the past, and that if she now had a reason to fight against a rock dragon, she would definitely win. The boys were absolutely sure that she wouldn't be able to win. Thus, Da's pride led her to accept an impossible task. He knew how impossible it was, which is why he needed a healer by his side. As a result, he sought out Miria to accompany him. When he told her what the mission would be, Miria asked why he didn't ask someone much stronger than her, like Marielle, to go with him instead. Da realized that she didn't trust him enough, so he said he had spoken with Marielle, and it was Marielle herself who told him she had a prior commitment, so he should ask for Miria's help. Miria's heart was filled with doubts. She knew how strong the rock dragons were, and reminded Da that Marielle had already told her that under no circumstances should she approach a rock dragon. So why would Marielle give permission for something like this? Da tried to convince her better. He even claimed that Grants was present when Marielle gave permission, and Grants confirmed it too. He emotionally appeals, saying she knew how strong the rock dragons were, and that if she didn't go with them, they would die. Reluctantly, Miria agreed to accompany them on the condition that if the situation got difficult, they would retreat immediately. Unfortunately, she was unable to save any of them. Marielle tries to encourage her, saying that she did nothing wrong, reminding her that it was only Dar's pride that killed him, and nothing more. Marielle also emphasizes the fact that, despite encountering a rock dragon, Miria managed to return home alive. This shocks Miria, as she knows for certain that she did not come back alone. She asks Marielle how she made it back to the village, and Marielle explains that the men who found her said they saw her being attacked by a monster on the outskirts of the town. Miria recalls that she had fainted when the rock dragon attacked her, so everything seems confusing in her mind. Noticing her confusion, Marielle states that humans sometimes suffer memory loss after traumatic encounters. This could be happening to her. She remembers the scene of seeing a small dragon fighting before her and begins to wonder if that was the dragon that brought her back home. She asks Marielle for a description of the dragon, but Marielle was not present when the small dragon brought her, so she doesn't have much to say. Still, Miria remains contemplative about the whole situation. Meanwhile, the small dragon awakens after a long rest. He realizes that his injuries have already healed, as he knows that resting would certainly regenerate him. He thinks about Miria and wonders if she is doing well too. Now, he reflects on everything that has happened in the last few days, since he used his fire against the rock dragon and believed it would have an effect, only to discover that the rock dragon has the power to restore its HP immediately after being attacked. This only strengthens his determination to become stronger at any cost, which means he needs to evolve. For that, he needs to reach level 25. With this goal in mind, he captures a worm and hangs it on a tree to attract other worms that would come to rescue it, and then he would kill them. He calls this deception technique summoning allies, and by using it, he receives the title of wrongdoer. He knows that what he is doing is wrong, but he needs this right now. Perhaps, after evolving, he won't act this way again. He kills all the worms that appear to confront him. And in a short time, he reaches level 25, finally becoming eligible to evolve. He asks to see the evolution tree and receives 5 options. They are Mini Dragon, Angel Mini Dragon, Child Dragon, Marble Child Dragon, and Young Plague Dragon. He starts to wonder what exactly the difference is between a mini dragon, a small dragon, and a baby dragon. The divine voice helps him clarify these doubts. The mini dragon is small in stature, like the baby dragon, but its individual growth is slow, and it has limited evolution options. However, many of its future evolutions have great potential. He doesn't like the idea of slow growth, so that doesn't impress him. The Angel Mini Dragon has a protective spirit and vows to live for others. As a result, it can use white magic, but it doesn't fight. Again, this doesn't interest him, as he enjoys fighting. He even thinks about white magic since he saw Miria use it, but that's not enough incentive to make a decision. The Child Dragon is the next evolution after the Baby Dragon, with enhanced abilities. The Marble Child Dragon is a dragon that has undergone a mutation and also possesses magical aptitude. The last option is the Young Plague Dragon, the first stage of an evil dragon that spreads disasters. The idea of spreading calamities does not appeal to the protagonist at all, so he immediately rejects this option. However, the system continues to list the characteristics of this dragon, including the fact that it has high intelligence and can use human transformation. He shouts that he does not want to become evil, but the idea of being able to transform into a human is too tempting to ignore. Which of these dragons will he evolve into? He thinks about going to the village and making friends, but that would mean spreading the plague. Confused, he shouts, not knowing which evolution path to choose. He thinks it's a bad idea to choose the Young Plague Dragon, but he desires the human transformation to see Miria again. He believes that if he chooses the Plague Dragon and then learns the human transformation, he can live a pure and honest life. Thus, he decides to evolve into the Young Plague Dragon. As he does this, his wings grow and his color changes. The divine voice announces that the evolution was a success. He looks at his reflection in the water and begins to regret the evolution, as his appearance seems somewhat intimidating. The voice warns that the level of view statistics has risen from level 2 to 3, and with that, he can review the details of his skills. The divine voice continues announcing the evolutions. The divine voice has risen to level 2. He gained the skills to fly and dragon scale dust, as well as the light bite skill, which evolved into venomous fang. He also received dark type, sickly breath, and paralyzing poison claws. He starts to become desperate, but the divine voice doesn't stop there. He received the titles of Calamity and Miscreant, leveling up to level 2. Everything feels terrifying to him, but he still believes that the human transformation will make up for it. Suddenly, the divine voice stops speaking. He panics, asking where the human transformation is, but receives no response. He questions whether he needs to level up before achieving the transformation, and the voice replies that it cannot provide that information at the current level, then disappears. The protagonist becomes depressed. He has all those strange skills, but he failed to achieve the human transformation. He asks for explanations regarding the divine voice, wanting to know whose voice it is, but again hears that he cannot obtain that answer at the current level. Then, he starts to ask about the skills he acquired. The dragon scale dust has the effect of releasing a debilitating miasma around him when he flaps his wings, affecting everything nearby. At the maximum level, the dragon can destroy nations simply by flying. He spreads his wings, and the plant beside him immediately dies. He falls into despair upon realizing that he is now a biological weapon. The divine voice moves on to another skill, sickly breath, an attack that spreads a miasma laden with highly contagious diseases, which has already been responsible for exterminating an entire civilization. He wonders desperately if he will be able to return to the path of the hero. He then inquires about his titles, as they seem to have a significant influence on the future. The divine voice speaks of the title Baby Dragon Hero, which embodies courage and may one day elevate him to hero status, strongly influencing his evolution path. Next, he asks about the next title, Infestor, granted to diabolical villains who leave mountains of corpses while laughing. This title boosts dark-type attacks, but makes it more difficult to learn holy magic. He claims it is the worst possible title, wants to return it, and regrets the choice, wishing to revert to being an innocent baby dragon. In the village, Miria asks Marielle if they will check all the protective stones of the village. Marielle confirms, explaining that they create a barrier around the village. Miria asks if this serves to prevent monsters from invading the place. Marielle explains that it is merely a charm that subconsciously discourages monsters from crossing that point. although some more stubborn ones manage to pass through. Miria again recalls the little dragon and thinks that perhaps he really was trying to help her. She asks Marielle if she can share more about the monsters. The elf comments that Miria has been obsessed with monsters since the accident. The girl admits that, to be honest, she can't shake the feeling that she was saved by a little dragon she met in the forest. Ariel warns her not to develop feelings for monsters and begins to explain more about them. She states that monsters can evolve into various forms, growing stronger with each evolution. They do this by hunting other creatures to level up. Miria remarks that humans also level up, improving their skills. The elf confirms this but explains that, in the case of monsters, they have different maximum levels. When they reach this limit, they evolve into a higher form, repeating this process over time and taking on increasingly powerful forms. Miria finds it hard to believe that, in the past, people were capable of discovering the true nature of monsters. This irritates the elf, who claims to have explained this story before. Back then, Miria was only 5 years old and had to look up to see Marielle, which annoys the elf for being called short. Marielle explains that sometimes special people emerge who are capable of hearing the divine voice that shares information about monsters, levels, and the like. These people are known as heroes, or saints. Therefore, this knowledge did not come from human trial and error, but directly from the divine voice. She continues by saying that monsters fight to survive, gain experience, and try to evolve. Every monster is driven to seek power and become more ferocious. So, even though the dragon saved Miria's life before, the next time they meet, he may have evolved into something more threatening and attack her. Miria is horrified and begs Marielle to stop. The elf says that, for her own sake, she should not create expectations regarding monsters, as they are the embodiment of the fighting instinct, which makes them incompatible with humans. Thus, we follow our protagonist, completely motivated to level up and get back on the right path, which for him means becoming a hero and reuniting with Miria. With this in mind, he begins to search for weak monsters to face. Suddenly, he feels his body struggling to move and soon realizes that several threads are binding his limbs. He has entered the territory of a spider. Clearly, this was not the type of monster he wanted to face, but the spider gives him no time to think and spits its web without hesitation. In desperation, he ignites his own body in flames to melt the threads, something that was obviously not in his plans. He panics and starts rolling on the ground, but luckily, the system alerts him that he has just obtained fire resistance. This eases the protagonist a bit, who then returns to combat with less worry. He notices that the spider is trapped and has taken some damage. Seizing the opportunity, our protagonist charges in with his claws, applies a paralyzing poison, and strings together a series of blows. After that, he checks his stats and discovers that he has only managed to take out half of the spider's health. Aware that it won't be possible to defeat her at that moment, he decides to flee. He begins to roll away to escape, but the spider starts to chase him. Seeing that he is about to be caught, he tries to fly, but his small wings can't support his weight. He attempts this several times but fails, assuming it's due to his still low level. Realizing he is about to be caught again, he rolls away once more. After 10 minutes, he continues to run without stopping, while the spider shows no signs of fatigue. At this moment, the system notifies him that the roll skill has increased from level 2 to level 3. In addition to escaping, he also earns the title of Chicken Runner, which leaves him a bit humiliated, although he thinks he would fight if he had a chance to win. Spotting a cliff, he finds himself faced with a choice. He knows he could die if he continues, so he tries to turn right before the edge, but he also considers the possibility of flying to the other side. However, his flying ability is still unreliable, so he has no choice but to attempt a jump. Just when everything seemed lost, his flying ability finally works, allowing him to leave the spider behind. Upon landing, he feels completely exhausted, but as he turns to laugh at the situation, he realizes the spider is no longer there. He believes she has given up and promises that he will defeat her when he levels up more. However, he soon sees a bridge made of web, and the spider leaps right in front of him, restarting the chase. The system informs him that the roll skill has increased from level 3 to level 4, but this is not very helpful anymore. Accidentally, he ends up running over a lion, gaining 12 experience points. Additionally, because of the title of Walking Egg, he levels up from level 1 to level 3. Thus, he runs over all sorts of creatures along the way, moving from level 3 to level 8. Noticing the increase in his stats, he feels more confident about facing the spider. Then, he stops, analyzes his skills, and discovers that she has something called double poison. The protagonist does not know exactly what that means, but he decides to attack her using his baby breath at full power. However, the spider uses her poison. He steps back and, despite having resistance to poison, feels his throat burn intensely. At that moment, he realizes that the spider is not moving, deducing that she is waiting for the poison to take effect. Nevertheless, Thanks to his resistance, that doesn't happen. Taking advantage of this, he pretends to be affected to lure her in. When the spider jumps towards him, he releases his baby breath and finishes with a downward strike. As a result, he levels up from level 8 to level 14. The dragon rejoices in his victory, but the most important thing for him would be his human transformation. The system informs him that the baby breath has leveled up from level 2 to level 3 and that he has acquired the skill Dragon Tail because of the finishing blow. Despite all this being positive, he does not receive his human transformation, which leaves him extremely disappointed. He begins to believe that he was deceived, but considers that perhaps there is still something he needs to learn to achieve it. Later that night, he returns to the lion he ran over on his way and finds a cave. He asks if anyone is there, but as he receives no answer, he enters inside. He starts eating the meat, but he is not fully satisfied with the taste, so he adds a few drops of the fruits he found earlier, which finally removes the strong taste of the meat and adds a spicy touch. After finishing, he thinks that perhaps that cave could become his base in the future. While reflecting on this, the system alerts him that he has earned the title of Chief Lord, which makes him uncomfortable, as if his life were being broadcast live. Later, he lies down to rest, wondering if he could become popular among the villagers and even teach them his homemade cooking. However, upon remembering his current appearance, he completely dismisses that possibility, thinking that even Miria would recognize him in this form. Annoyed, he blames the system for mentioning the human transformation and not granting it. Looking up at the sky, he demands that it be delivered to him, as he does not want to spend his entire life alone. Meanwhile, in the village of humans, Miria overhears a conversation with an old man who claims to have seen one of them near a lake just outside the village. Intrigued, she asks him to tell her more. Even inebriated, the old man recounts that he was fishing when suddenly he saw someone among the bushes. The figure looked haggard, almost like a zombie, and walked into the forest while murmuring incomprehensible things. The others do not believe him, attributing everything to his drunkenness. The old man insists that he really saw it and claims that he hadn't drunk a single drop of alcohol that day. Miria is visibly intrigued. The blonde young man notices this and reminds her that the death of those two adventurers was not her fault. Miria tries to calm herself and leaves the scene. Back with Marielle, she tells her what she heard and states her intention to go into the forest. The elf immediately forbids her, asserting that if there were indeed a possibility of Dew still being alive, he would have returned to the village by now. Miria admits she isn't sure, but suggests forming groups with the villagers to search for him. Marielle rejects the idea, making it clear that she does not intend to risk anyone else's life. Miria calms down, and then Marielle, trying to cheer her up, says she will contact the guild to investigate the matter. Miria understands and apologizes for being irrational, although her words do not fully convince Marielle. We then return to our protagonist once again motivated to level up. At that moment, he encounters a monster resembling a puddle of water and tries to check its statistics. However, upon doing so, his vision distorts and his head begins to hurt. The system warns him that the skill See Statistics cannot provide accurate information at level 3, but since he has just leveled up to level 4, he is able to read the monster's statistics for a few seconds. This leaves him confused, but in the end, he continues on with his journey. The slime tries to attack our protagonist, who quickly uses the rolling ability and runs away. He manages to escape and is left wondering what he just saw, because the statistics were nothing. In particular, however, he managed to feel that it was something he shouldn't get close to under any circumstances, yet he decided not to think about it anymore and went in another direction. He started walking, looking for meat, and ends up finding a jar next to a tree. He thinks it could be very useful for putting fruit and other things, but when trying to get the jar, it jumps and starts spinning, hitting him in the face. Only then does he realize that it is a monster. The divine voice reveals that it is a D-rank turtle. Our protagonist is shocked that a turtle can be a monster and a jar. At the same time, he attacks with the dragon's punch, but it only takes away 1 HP. Then he starts to launch several attacks and knocks the turtle down with his tail, but it uses rest, recovering all the HP. Immediately, he continues trying to kill the monster, but fails until he has the idea of testing to see if it is the aquatic type. Leaving the turtle terrified, he throws it into the water, and then after that he gains 36 experience points. But due to his title, he gains additional experience and goes from level 14 to 15. He thinks it was a good fight, until the divine voice reveals that he received the title Crook King, and his title Rogue went from level 2 to level 3. When he turns around, he sees several turtles behind him, and wonders why there are so many of them there, until he remembers that the previous one gave a scream before falling into the water, realizing that she called her allies. They come together, forming a tower of turtles, which seems to be something quite useless for us. Protagonist flies to the last one, catches it, and throws it on the ground, doing this with all the others. With this, he gains the meteorite ability and is excited to realize that he can gain abilities by doing so. After a few movements, the divine voice says that he has gained 594 experience points, and thanks to the title he has gained additional experience points going from level 15 to 30. Flying skill went from level 1 to level 2. See statistics, he went from level 4 to level 5, and he is happy that a whole group of monsters have appeared in front of him. However, he is sad because when he defeats them, the hull ends breaking and can't be used as pots, even though he got a lot of meat and leveled up. Everything is fine. He wonders where he can get vegetables, as they are also important. He begins to think that even though he has evolved a lot, he has not achieved human transformation, and that he only has 10 more levels. Until the next transformation, he wonders if this transformation will really. Appearing at that moment, he hears a strange noise in the forest, a few different footsteps, and when he goes there, he sees a monster he has never seen before. He tries to see its statistics, but it is not close to him, enough for them to be revealed, and the only thing that can be seen are details about the species, then discovers that it is a clay bear rank, the place with a high recovery rate, our dragon. He realizes that, in terms of rank, they are both on the same level and wonders if he has any chance of winning the fight. When he remembers the name of the monster, he becomes confused as to whether it is a clay bear or a clay in bear shape, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is that if he manages to win, he will have clay to mold freely and make pots, jugs, and cups. He follows the bear to a certain place and prepares an stealth attack with his fists from behind, but the bear opens wide to devour. Our protagonist, who manages to resist, but starts to complain that this is clearly not a bear, the bear advances on him, which used the roll ability to dodge the attack and counterattack from the bear's back, making his HP drop from 40 to 25. The dragon thinks it will be easy because he took a lot of HP with just this attack, but the bear heals instantly, and our protagonist realizes that the fight will take longer than he imagined. He goes back to rolling around the bear, thinking about what skills he can use. He thinks he would like to use the meteorite skill he just learned, but it would be impossible to remove this giant bear from the ground, so he uses the hit and run strategy, attacking the back of the bear and running before the counterattack. The bear continues to regenerate, but the dragon knows that when the bear's MP runs out, he will win the fight. However, from one moment to the next, the bear lets out a powerful roar that makes the entire forest shuddering next to him, forms a sandstorm that completely covers him when she disciplines herself and reveals her new form, a bear with a hoof full of thorns. This discourages our protagonist. Who knows? Now he won't even be able to use his ability to roll while he was thinking about it. He realizes that he is low on MP. In this moment of distraction, the bear throws one of the thorns at him. The protagonist gets dodges and notices a peculiarity, decides to test something, rips off an arm from the bear, thus confirming that the clay softens when it is away from the body. With this in mind, forms a sphere and heats it to high temperatures. Temperatures using meteorite defeating the bear after victory, the system warns that he has received 300 XP thanks to his title of Walking Egg, and that he has risen 3 levels. This alleviates our protagonist. Then the system adds that he acquired a new skill called nutcracking. The prota is a little surprised that the system considered him that way, but he cheers up when he thinks that finally there is clay back. The den leaves the clay cooking and goes to look for something to eat in the forest. He finds unusual mushrooms, but upon hearing that they are poisonous, he decides to throw them away. He also comes across a slightly large plant and was about to evaluate it, but it reacts and tries to attack him. The little dragon doesn't back down and wakes up immediately. The system warns him that it is a rare plant, which feeds on animals. However, it cannot ingest salt, which accumulates in the discolored part, as the dragon needs salt to cook. It ends up taking the plant with it. Here we move on to the Miria while walking through the forest. She remembers what Maria told her to let the guild investigate. However, based on the testimony of B, who said he saw 2 walking, she decides to go look for him because she feels guilty right at that moment. Another one of those worms appears, but she eliminates it with a fireball and continues on her way more calmly. After that, we return to the dragon, who is observing a D-rank mushroom monster. When they grow, they can move, transforming into warlike monsters, and their flavor is similar to meat. So the protagonist thinks about how good it would be in a broth. Right now, he sees even rarer mushrooms. These are Morotrogia, whose value can lead a country to glory or ruin. It has hallucinogenic effects and causes an intense euphoria. 500 years ago was used as a stimulant, generating many drug addicts. However, the prota pays no attention to this and burns them in exchange for taking some valuable piperies B. They are so precious that its value is measured in gold, so he takes a lot in the meantime. Miria arrives at the most dangerous part of the forest, But out of fear, she decides to turn around and return to the village, so we return to the dragon's house. He got a luminous mushroom and we see how he finally prepares his soup, pacifying how delicious it is after adding salt. With the dish well served, he gets ready to eat. He feels how the flavor of the meat merged with the soup when he finished eating. He feels as if he had returned to his old life. At that moment, the system warns him that his title of cook has gone from level 1 to 2. The dragon, he comments that eating in that bowl was very complicated as he spilled a lot, so he will use the clay to create a bigger one, and with a breaking spoon, he will also make bricks for a wall, which yields him the title of potter, ceramist. The next morning, we see a carriage. The coachman tells some ladies that the forest is already very close when they get down. We see a human accompanied by a semi-human who were sent by a guild to Noah's forest back to the den. And with the new food, he is willing to cut the meat and skin the wolves. After that, he seasons them and leaves them to dry like he goes out for a walk looking stylish, saying that he is already used to this world. When he returns to the den, he observes that the monkeys are eating his meat, and although he manages to scare them away, he thinks of a way to stop these filthy beasts from continuing to steal his food, so he collects poisonous mushrooms and creates a mixture with the meat while collecting them. Mentions that now he can practically differentiate whether wild plants are poisonous or not. At that moment, he notices the wind carrying the flower petals and approaches that beautiful place, being amazed by how beautiful he is. Suddenly, a small creature appears before him for a moment. Our protagonist is mesmerized by its rarity. Upon seeing its statistics, he discovers that it is a species called poisonous princess, whose abilities are exclusively poisonous. The little dragon is surprised. However, the little beast runs away from the place. Suddenly, a stake falls close to our dragon. This catches his attention, which is taken advantage of by that creature. Our prota reacts and Amanda flying. She falls into the trunk of a tree and disappears, letting out a laugh. The dragon, he assumes that she has given up, but out of nowhere he feels the poison begin to act on his body. His senses weaken, and little by little his vision distorts until he falls to the ground, wondering if it was part of that creature's plan. His stats are his main special poison. He asks the divine voice if this special poison is very different from normal poison, but the divine voice warns that he cannot provide these specific information. At level 3, he imagined this would happen and tries to get up, but his body hurts a lot and he realizes that the situation is getting bad. He doesn't remember seeing no plant that fights poison and realizes that the situation is going from bad to worse. So, he asks the divine voice for information about the lizard. The divine voice says that it is a poisonous Lacerda princess of rank D, a cunning monster that poisons its prey and escapes, and after the poison takes effect, eats the remains. Our protagonist thinks that this Lacerda princess is even worse than the title of his con man. The divine voice goes on to say that by ingesting highly poisonous substances, she creates a potent poison internally, and that her bodily fluids can serve as an antidote to the poison that she creates, using this to negotiate for her life whenever she is captured. So, our protagonist's only option is to capture her to get the antidote. He can move a little, thanks to his resistance to the poison, and imagines that she is nearby, waiting for the poison to kill him. He starts to run, thinking that she cannot lose sight of him, otherwise it would be a waste, and so this is sure that she is chasing him. He finds her and tries to catch her, but she also has the ability to roll. However, our dragon knows that up ahead is a cliff, because he remembers the time he ran away from the spider. At that moment, his rolling ability goes from level 4 to level 5. He thinks he can catch up to her now and accelerates, but is surprised when she catches him, hits her with a clay stake, being shocked by the fact that she can shoot even while she's rolling. He chases her again. She throws 3 more stakes at our protagonist, but he continues following her. He admits that one day she will surpass him in the ability to roll, but for now he is the best. So he jumps towards her, hitting her and sending her flying. He thinks he has done it now, capture her, but when he looks up, he realizes that she is heading towards the river, and that way he would lose his antidote. He jumps, but the poison takes effect immediately and he starts to see blurry. Even so, he doesn't give up. The grab uses the fire-breathing skill and manages to return to a safe place. However, after getting the antidote, she faints. We return to Miria, who thinks she is out of luck once again, as she didn't find the candy. At that moment, she hears someone calling for her and realizes that it is Marielle. She goes to her running, the elf fights with her and tells her to answer next time. The young woman apologizes and asks what she needs her for. Marielle comments that she hasn't seen her often in the last few days, so she stayed worried and went to her house to visit, but didn't find anyone there. He asked her what she was doing. Mira explained that she had a slight cold and went for a walk to feel better. Elf asks if she's not going to the forest, which Mira immediately denies. Marielle asks if she's sure, and Miria confirms. The elf explains that she received news from the guild and that adventurers are on the way, and asks Miria to help her shop. Returning to our protagonist, he wakes up wondering where he is and remembers that he was poisoned and chased the poisonous princess, realizes that the lizard is still in front of her and asks if she is there waiting for the poison to kill it. But when she moves, she notices that her arms are no longer heavy and wonders if she received the poison antidote, which the little animal in front of him confirms. He is grateful, even though they have gone through a fierce battle going through blood, sweat, and tears. But perhaps this made them realize that they are soulmates. Taking a good look, he notices that she is actually very cute and starts rocking her. Later in his cave, he makes her some soup and asks her if she wants some. He gives her a bowl to her, and when she tastes it, she seems to like it. Our dragon is happy to have someone to eat with, as before he was very lonely. He thinks that neither he nor she have names, as they are only called by the name of the species, but thinks that this is not important, as they really don't need names. He notices that she has become very attached to him and says that it is good to have a new friend, saying that she can stay there for as long as possible. As long as you want, she notices a barrel in the corner. And our protagonist comments that it is a special poison that he is making. At that moment, she dives into the barrel, which shocks our protagonist, who thinks that she is going to die, but remembers that when she eats something highly poisonous, it strengthens her own poison. He wonders if it is really good and proves it, taking a lot of damage and falling to the ground. The divine voice reveals that the skill of poison resistance went from level 4 to level 5, and he wonders how she can eat that like it was nothing. The next day, the two work together to finish off some wolves. The gecko used earth magic, while our protagonist defeated the wolves with kicks. After that, they collected fruits, took advantage of the moment, and thus ended the game. Day, finally returning home. At night, they were sleeping, and at a certain point, the protagonist wakes up and sees the gecko on top of him. For a moment, he is scared when he remembers that its venom is mortal, but seeing her so calm, he just asks her not to bite him. The next day, they went to collect some wild fruits. When the protagonist gives one to the gecko to taste, she feels a little bit of disgust. Our dragon assumes that this is normal. After all, the species was not made to eat this type of food. At that moment, the gecko jumps up. The dragon asks if it found anything good. Gecko asks him to follow her, arriving at a mushroom that smells like rotting meat. It is a B-value cadaveric conidium, a giant purplish mushroom that contains a poison so strong that no one dares to consume it. The dragon asks if it was the poison that attracted her, and if she really intends to eat it. The gecko was already salivating, but the dragon burns the mushroom, saying that later he would only stink. She scolds him, but in return promises to look for other toxic plants. At that moment, she activates clay stakes. The dragon thinks she is irritated with him, but the stakes are fired at the bushes. From there comes a monster, with the appearance of a dog, a two-headed one. The protagonist realizes that he has absurdly high statistics, as well as disturbing abilities such as gravity or gravity. He is not sure if he can overcome. But considering that the monster has tenacity and would chase them if they ran away, he looks at his friend and, seeing that she thinks the same, they decide to fight. The plan is simple. He will attack to get attention, while she takes the opportunity to poison him. So, it will only be a matter of time. However, the dog's other head blocks his blow. The dragon retreats, and then the monster uses magic, creating a circle on the protagonist's feet. He falls, feeling his body heavy, almost immobile, concluding that it must be the effect of gravity. The dog advances, and the protagonist already gives up, but his friend throws a stake at the monster, breaking the spell and nullifying gravity. The dragon flies and, from above, uses his fire breath with everything. When the flames dissipate, the enemy was already healing. The dragon gets angry that everyone can regenerate, so he analyzes the role of each head. The angry one is focused on physical attacks, while the crying one uses magic. At that moment, the crying one is about to use gravity. The dragon runs to stop it, but the angry head bites him. Still, he uses his dragon fist, hitting the crying head squarely in the mouth. With that, the gecko manages to attack and finally poison her. The poison spreads throughout the monster's body, but the crying head starts laughing. The dragon realizes that she is using healing, but this does not remove the effect of the poison. The hit points, they continue to fall, and they declare victory. However, something unexpected happens. The angry head decapitates the crying one. The team is shocked by this, eliminating their own companion to contain the poison. Given this, the dragon states that it will never evolve into a two-headed dragon. Despite this, Now the monster can no longer use magic. By observing the statistics, the protagonist discovers the skill sacrifice. At that moment, the crying head rises, trying to take them together to their death, starting with the gecko. She dodges and runs, but the head chases her. The dragon tries to follow. However, the angry head stops him. With no other option, the protagonist enters into direct combat. He lands a blow, dodges, and manages to throw the enemy from above, holding his head and crushing him against the ground. Floor. Leaving it stuck in the ground, the system warns that the crushing skill has increased from level 1 to level 2. Even so, he needs to go after his friend. As he runs, he thinks about everything they've experienced together and in the fact that she was the first friend he had. He begs God, saying that he no longer wants human transformation, he just wants her to be safe. When he arrives at the place, he sees everything stained with blood and imagines the worst, begging and asking her to appear. At that moment, the gecko appears from among the bushes, badly injured. The dragon is paralyzed when he sees her in that state. Just then, the evil creature appears, trying to attack it, but the protagonist intervenes and tears it apart without mercy. Once this is done, he carries the gecko in his arms and declares that he is relieved to see it still alive. As he hugs her, the system warns him that he has received experience points. Furious, the dragon shouts at him to shut up. Suddenly, however, he hears that he has acquired the human transformation skill, leaves the protagonist confused, and he can't help but ask if it's serious. In a change of scene, Miria finishes cleaning Marielle's house to welcome guests. A little curious, she wonders what they will be like. The elf comments that she will soon find out. Then, Miria notices a book. The elf explains that it talks about monsters and that she thought Miria might like it. So, Miria asks permission to read it. As she leafs through, she sees a wide variety of monsters with their descriptions written in an ancient text. The elf explains that F-rank monsters are the weakest, those that even her could defeat. Then come those of rank D, much stronger, which only trained adventurers can beat. Above them are monsters higher than rank B, which can only be defeated by heroes and saints. While talking about this, two adventurers arrive at the village. Returning to the subject, Miria asks what the rank of the stone dragon is. The elf responds that according to the book, he is of rank C. However, she adds that she heard that they can become stronger through evolution, even going so far as to easily defeat. That's why any common human always warns Miria and the people of the village to never enter the forest. Heads down, Miria says she understands. After that, they remain silent for a few seconds until Marielle comment that it looks like the guests have already arrived. The door opens, allowing us to see the two adventurers from before. In the forest, we see the two adventurers. Yuno asks Meltia why they accepted a C-rank request, with just the two of them there, as it is a difficult mission, and they should have waited for the rest of the group. Meltia says that it's actually easier if it's just the two of them, as they can just run away and abandon her if things get difficult. Yuno asks her not to play that kind of joke, and Meltia explains that even though it is a C-rank request, the objective of the mission is not to kill monsters, but to search the forest, and therefore it is not a dangerous mission. Yuno finds it strange that they are looking for a person who is supposedly dead. Going back a little, we see the adventurers arriving at Marielle's house. Meltia comments that it is not normal to see elves in human villages. Miria serves tea to them, and Marielle asks her to leave for a moment. The elf says she doesn't want her to hear the details of the mission. Meltia asks who the person they are looking for. Marielle says his name is Doss and that he was in a group with the girl they just saw and who fought a rock dragon. As they go out to investigate, Yuno wonders why Miria looks at them so much and remembers that Marielle said that Miria feels responsible for Doss's death. The elf even said that she suspects that Miria was going to the forest to look for him and that it is extremely dangerous for her to enter in that forest alone. Therefore, he requested the mission to find out if the rumor is true. Yuno concludes that the mission is to search the forest and find proof that Doss is dead. Meltia confirms and says that if they manage to find the body, it would be perfect. But if they can't, just spend several days hunting, and if they don't find anything, they should say that the rumor is false. Returning to the Our Dragon, he wrapped the lizard with healing herbs so that its wounds heal faster. She is sleeping, and our protagonist decides to check her stats after having climbed level. He opens his menu and sees that the human transformation is there. He comments that leaving the cave was the right decision, as the lizard could attack him if he suddenly saw a human there. He begins to walk quickly and says it's not like he wants to go to the village to see Miria. He activates the roll ability. But he stops halfway, admitting that he really wants to go to the village. He can't believe that he received the human transformation right at the moment he said he didn't need it, and is left thinking about what he should do if he became a human, because he doesn't want to abandon the lizard. But living in a real village would be very good. He thinks that maybe he could change every 3 days and live in the village and in the cave, but rules out this possibility. He thinks that just the possibility of gaining the trust of humans is incredible and is super excited, hoping that it will be a human handsome or maybe a super pretty girl so he can stare at himself in the river. He thinks he could imagine this forever, but it's time to act. He activates human transformation, and his body begins to mutate. When he finally finishes, he looks at his reflection in the river water and, to his disappointment, the transformation is even more grotesque than that of the young plague dragon. Asks the divine voice if human transformation really should be so stupid. The voice responds that, at its current level, it cannot provide these explanations. Our protagonist asks how many times she will give you hope and then rip it away, telling the voice to give you back your hope. He questions how the other young plague dragons use this to do some kind of evil, because their attack and his defense fell by half, not to mention that his mana runs out much faster. He admits that the transformation was a failure and returns to his normal state. We return to the adventurers who have just finished defeating a spider. Meltia tells Yuno that she is happy that she is there. They continue walking until it gets dark. The leader says that they have not seen any sign of Sweet, and Yuno comments that it's not that deep in the forest, and the monsters there are getting stronger and stronger. Meltia thinks it's better to go back, but at that moment they see a cave. They approach the entrance and see 2 statues, one clearly representing a dragon, and the other looking like a human. Yuno asks if it's some kind of shrine made by dragon worshippers, but the leader says she doesn't think the village adopt this type of religion, and you are feeling powerful magic. Coming out of the statues, Yuno, being half human and half dog, smells a pleasant smell. They enter and see meat hanging. Meltia tells them to enter the cave. Inside, Yuno notices mushrooms lights on the wall. Meltia finds a skin on the floor, and Yuno finds a barrel that smells really good. She says it contains tons of red fruits that look a lot like spices. Meltia approaches at the time, asking if it could be red gold, and Yuno asks if they can take some, but the leader denies it, saying that cave is probably a hideout for thieves and that they could get involved in something dark. At that moment, the lizard appears confronting the adventurers, but leaves the cave, and Yuno asks what that was. Meltia says that it was a poison princess, and that just one, her bite, is enough to kill. She tells Yuno to leave the cave as quickly as possible. Outside, we see our dragon walking this way and that way, because he saw the human knight and the half-human entering the cave. He wonders if they were impressed when they saw his cave, and wonders if he should appear to them, but remembers that he is a monster, and they would assume that even so, he activates the transformation into a human again, because in this world, there are demi-humans, so there is a chance that they will think that he is one of them. However, when he approaches them, he thinks that he is greeting affectionately, but in their vision, it's something scary. Melt stops Yuno from attacking, and then uses his magic. The transformation is undone, and they realize it's a plague dragon. A leader asks Yuno to run, and our protagonist becomes depressed. Later on, Yuno asks Meltia if they are being followed, and she denies. She can't believe there are plague dragons living in that forest, and that's an unpleasant surprise. Yuno remembers that they talked about Rock Dragon, but nothing about what they just saw, and asks if they should go back to the village. The leader says not yet. There's nothing concrete to report, so it's not a good idea to go back now, and they'll need more manpower if they want to investigate further. Yuno suggests calling the rest of the group the next day. Our protagonist leaves the cave and collects some meat. Thinking that he is completely recovered, despite the previous day being very bad, even having achieved human transformation, he goes to the princess and says that he needs to ask a favor, as there is some monkeys stealing the dried meat he makes. So you want to poison the meat to teach them a lesson, and you would like the poison to be as strong as possible without any color or smell, so that it doesn't understand. He asks her if she can do this, and she confirms, goes to a pot, and leaves the poison there. Our dragon wonders if that is really poison, as it has no color or smell. He puts the poison in the flesh and watches the monkeys for hours until he falls asleep, but after a while they arrive. One falls to the ground, and at that moment, our protagonist jumps on top of them, saying that he is going to end all the monkeys. They scream and start to work as a team, but our dragon knows that his and the princess's teamwork is much better. He then gives a roar. The princess attacks, eliminating 2 monkeys, and the dragon finishes the last one. However, the monkeys give a supersonic whistle, and their leader appears. Our protagonist is shocked, as he looks like a higher-ranked monster. He activates the ability to see status, and realizes that they are equal to his own. But the leader has an ability to fortify his followers. He thinks he needs to end this soon, and attacks with a fireball, but the smaller monkeys come forward to defend their leader. With earth magic, each one launches itself to attack. The dragon notices that they have become faster. His friend defends him, but one of them holds him back from behind. The alpha runs towards him. The gecko intercepts him, but is captured and thrown. The dragon frees himself and secures, but is already at the limit. He asks for the voice and information about the monkeys. Giant orangutan is a higher rank monster, an evolution of smaller ones. He fought and defeated the former alpha to become the boss. Evolving through battles is something sacred to them. Furthermore, they have mastered support magic to help their clan. This information doesn't help the dragon much, but he remembers that the orangutan has telepathic communication, so it might be possible to negotiate. Take one of Ren's monkeys so that the leader can hear him, and the orangutan too. Speaks telepathically, saying that he realized that the dragon knows his abilities. The dragon comments that the monkey will die because of the poison, but his friend can give him an antidote. However, if he does, that's it. They should let them go to the orangutan. That's not an option, as they're too big a threat to ignore, so they need to eliminate them, even if they have to sacrifice someone. The dragon responds that, if they both fight with everything, neither will come out alive. The alpha retorts with his clan's motto, eliminate the weak and let them die. This is how he ascended the throne. The dragon thinks in another solution and challenges him to a duel. The gorilla is surprised and explains that, in their world, duels only happen in disputes between clans or when an alpha is challenged. This is something without precedence, but it can work. After all, the rules could still apply even when facing another species, but only if he and the gecko are considered their own clan. The dragon claims that yes, in this case, the gorilla accepts the challenge. The gecko then treats the friendly man with poison, but when he finishes, he is captured by another. The protagonist demands to know what is happening, and the gorilla explains that it is to avoid interference in the duel, promising to free her as soon as she wins. Without further words, they both stand face to face. The gorilla begins with powerful blows, which only allow the protagonist defends himself, with no chance to counterattack. The dragon uses the rolling ability to move away, but the gorilla confronts him, saying that this is not fighting and that it is an insult to them. Knowing that it cannot continue like this, or the gecko could end up in danger, the dragon decides to counterattack. He takes a big leap and falls on the gorilla, hitting him with his tail, followed by a sequence of punches that leave him stunned. As he moves away, he assesses the damage and discovers that the enemy still has a third of his life remaining motivated. He goes on the attack again. However, the gorilla enters a state different, completely repelling the protagonist and directing all his MP towards agility. Once this is done, he goes on the attack. Incinerate him, but the gorilla takes no damage and knocks him to the ground with one blow. Taking advantage of his speed, he attacks from several directions. The dragon recognizes that he is too fast and has an idea. Let go a deafening roar and taunts him, telling him to fight face to face, otherwise he is a coward. The gorilla is indignant and accepts. So they both run at each other, exchanging blow after blow. After some time, both are exhausted and decide the fight with the last attack, which only the dragon manages to connect, throwing the gorilla to the ground. The protagonist declares himself the winner. In the however below, the gorilla delivers one last blow that also throws the dragon to the ground. Little by little, the protagonist loses consciousness. The gecko approaches, but he only listens to the system inform him about your achievements before finally passing out. A few hours later, our protagonist wakes up confused, not knowing where he is. To his surprise, he realizes he is back in the cave. After a few moments organizing his thoughts, he remembers what happened and remembers that he managed to defeat the giant orangutan when he realizes that he really won the fight. He feels overcome with emotion by the satisfied expression on the poisonous princess's face. He deduces that it was she who carried him back to the cave. He briefly celebrates the victory. Next to her, relieved that everything ended well, however, when he looks to the side, he is startled to see the same group of monkeys that served as the giant orangutan's subordinates. Their first thought is that they came to take revenge on their former leader, but instead of hostility, they begin to celebrate with their enthusiasm. Their behavior suggests that they now recognize him as the new chief. Intrigued, he checks his status screen and discovers that he has received the title of chief of the clan. So he concludes that by defeating the former leader automatically inherited his position. The princess immediately becomes hostile towards the monkeys, but he quickly calms her down, explaining that the situation may in fact be advantageous. He reasons that they can use the monkeys as helpers to take care of various tasks and heavy work. saving them from doing everything themselves. While continuing to interact with the monkeys, Princess becomes increasingly jealous, but he remains distracted, too fascinated with the situation to notice her change in mood with the monkeys taking over the job. He suddenly finds himself without nothing to do as he doesn't want to sit still. He starts thinking about productive ways to use his free time. He realizes that with more inhabitants in the cave, they will need to store a larger amount of food, and for this, pots will be needed the next day. He begins to work on making clay containers while one of the monkeys watches with great curiosity. "Fun," he says to the monkey. "Pay close attention and learn while molding a new pot with clay," commenting that monkeys are probably more skilled at this task because of their fingertips after completing the task. Demonstration tells the monkey to try to make one himself and leaves him responsible for the pottery. When he goes outside, he is surprised to see the poisonous princess trying to make a clay pot on her own. He naturally comments that with those hands and legs, she won't be able to advance much. She misinterprets the comment. She is embarrassed and runs away. He looks on confused, asking if what he said was wrong, also realizing that she has been acting wrongly. Strange shape lately, although I don't understand why. Meanwhile, Meltia and Yuno are sitting in a nearby cafe having something while waiting for the rest of the group to arrive. As time permits passes and no one appears, they begin to worry. Meltia tries to remain calm and assures Yuno that the others will return as soon as they complete the mission, and Uno, however, cannot shake the fear that still feels. Since the encounter with the Dragon of Calamity, whose overwhelming presence continues to haunt her mind, Meltia reassures her, saying that they will soon resolve this situation back to the cave in the morning. Next, the protagonist wakes up and is greeted by the princess. When he tries to get up, he feels his body heavy and realizes that the monkeys are spread over him. Sleeping soundly, he tries to shake them off, but he can't wake them up, so he gives up and goes back to sleep. Minutes later, he wakes up to a worrying scene. One of the monkeys is lying on the ground, weak and asking for help without hesitation. He uses his assessment skill and discovers that the princess poisoned him. Anger begins to boil within him and he demands the antidote immediately. At first, she refuses and stubbornly turns away. He insists more firmly, and after repeating the request several times, she finally gives in and hands over the antidote. He administers it to the monkey, who little by little begins to recover, with the situation under control, approaching Princess and calmly asks why she did that. After hesitating, she admits that she has felt left out since the monkeys became part of the group, and that he no longer gives her with the same attention. Upon hearing this, he realizes that perhaps he ignored her feelings. He sincerely apologizes for having neglected her and suggests that they spend more time together to make it up to her, proposes that on the day. Next, they go hunting, just the two of them, enjoying a moment alone. The princess lights up when she hears the proposal and happily accepts it in another place. Miria begins to realize that several days have already passed since the adventurers entered the forest and no news arrived. Worried about their safety, she decides that she can no longer wait. Determined to find the protagonist and the others, she prepares and sets off alone into the forest in search of them. The next day, he and the poisonous princess go out into the forest on their hunting date. He is genuinely excited, enjoying the air fresh and the chance to go hunting again. However, the princess doesn't seem that happy, and it soon becomes clear why he brought the monkeys along while he doesn't see any problem with that. She hoped that if it was just a moment for the two of them, the monkeys are full of energy and enthusiasm, clearly having fun with the ride. Feeling disappointed, the princess walks a few steps ahead alone, and in silence after a while she notices a danger nearby, when suddenly two forest wolves jump out of the trees ready to attack. He assumes it will be a simple fight that they can resolve together. But before either of them can act, the monkeys advance first and defeat the wolves quickly with impressive coordination. The battle ends almost instantly, leaving the two with nothing to do. The monkeys celebrate their victory, while the poisonous princess feels even more left out as Miria goes deeper into the forest than she intended initially. As she progresses through the dense trees, she realizes that she has gone too far. The environment begins to appear unfamiliar, and a feeling of uneasiness grows within her. She considers the idea to return home, but at the moment he decides to retreat, he sees his figure walking ahead in the distance. Relieved, calling out to him and speeding up his pace to reach him, but before he can get there, suddenly comes across a creature he has never seen in his life. His presence is overwhelming and Miria is paralyzed by fear. At the same time, the protagonist returns to the cave next to the princess, asking sorry for paying too much attention to monkeys lately. He explains that since he is now technically their boss, he has responsibilities and can't just ignore them. But he says he understands her frustration. To make her happy, he promises that next time, the hunt will be just between the two of them without the monkeys accompanying them. Upon hearing this, the princess is filled with joy, jumps on him and starts licking him, excitedly delighted with the idea of having him all to herself. As they enjoy the moment, a loud scream echoes throughout the forest. The voice is extremely familiar to him, and he quickly recognizes it as Miria's, realizing that she may be in danger. Again, without hesitation, he moves away from the princess and immediately begins to roll in the direction of the scream. He tells her to stay where she is, but she refuses to let him go alone and tries to roll after him. Unfortunately, her ability to roll is very low. She loses control, hits a rock, and her life points drop to less than half. She stops for a moment to check her condition and confirming that she's still alive. Although he's worried, he knows he can't waste time. He assures her that his feelings haven't changed and that he just needs to save Miria. So he keeps going on a high speed towards the location of the scream. At the same time, Miria is about to be devoured by 3 wolves when at the exact moment the protagonist appears and crushes one of them against the ground. He positions himself quickly in front of her, protecting the divine voice. Then informs that those creatures are D-rank monsters known as Magi Wolves that use a third eye to transmit information visual to nearby pack members. Thanks to this ability, they can coordinate perfectly to track and hunt their prey with absolute precision. Wolves approach, ready to attacking. At first glance, they seem like common D-rank monsters, but when analyzing their statistics more closely, he notices something strange. An unusual aura surrounds them, indicating that they are stronger than normal for this level. At this moment, the wolves launch a coordinated attack, but he responds by releasing a baby dragon breath, reducing one of them to ashes. The other 2 try to attack him from the sides. However, he quickly thrusts his fists into their faces, knocking them down and ending the fight. Then he tries to approach Miria calmly, but as expected, she is terrified when she sees him and retreats until leaning against a tree without knowing what his intentions are. However, when she realizes that he doesn't attack her, and when she remembers that a familiar dragon saved her previously, she begins to connect the dots. She understands that he is the same dragon that rescued her in the past. Gathering courage, he slowly gets up and tries to communicate. When she notices that he is not hostile and is focused on protecting her, she begins to trust him. A silent understanding is established between the 2, recognizing themselves as allies, but more Magi Wolves continue to approach, surrounding them with caution. He positions himself in front of Miria and orders them to. She stays behind him, trusting him completely. She moves quickly and climbs onto his back with great confidence. He prepares to break the siege and take her to safety while the wolves prepare themselves to attack. In the village, we see a man calling Gregorio going to Marielle. She asks if he managed to find anything, but he replies that he didn't find anything. He explains that they looked for Miria around the village whole, and there is not even a sign of her. Marielle, irritated, thinks that Miria was an idiot for going to the forest alone. Gregorio then asks if they will look for her in the forest. Marielle responds, "Who will look alone?" and asks him to, just to be sure, check the village once again, in case they missed something, as there is a chance that Miria will return. He accepts Marielle's order and asks that she be careful on the adventurer's side. A new member comments that the forest doesn't seem that dangerous, and Uno disagrees and says that the cave is strange because inside they found several pots of seasoning, and in addition she also saw a plague dragon. Melty explains that she concluded that it is too risky for just the 2 of them to investigate alone, so she called the rest of the group. Uno asks if we'll start investigating now, but Meltia responds that not first. They will go back to meet with the client and get permission to proceed with the full list. In the meantime, our protagonist runs away from the wolves. He thinks that they are too insistent and that now there are much more than before. When he looks ahead, he notices a point where he will not be surrounded and believes that there he can protect Miria. He puts her on the ground behind him and positions himself in front. The forest wolves advance, and he uses the baby dragon's fire to burn 2 of them. A third runs in a zigzag and jumps towards him, but he tears it in half with ease. Yet something seems strange. The wolves don't back down at any point. He wonders why one of the fallen bodies starts to drain a strange tear from the creature's eyes. Without wasting time, he picks up the Miria and continues running through the forest. He thinks about what to do with her because he doesn't know what will happen if he takes her to the village, but the same thing will probably happen as before when he tried to get closer and was attacked by the residents. He wonders why Miria was alone in the forest, being sure that she knows how dangerous the place is. It would be so much easier if you could just ask what's going on. But for now, he intends to take her to a safe place close to the village. Miria hugs him and thanks him, and he realizes that he managed to understand a little of what she said, the divine voice. So he asks the dragon if he would like to see the evolution tree. He thinks the voice is trying to ruin his moment again, but decides to take a look. 4 options appear. He finds it strange that there is no evolution for Plague Dragon, even though this is its current race. The first option is Dark Human Dragon, a low-ranking half-human dragon classified as demi-human with its body covered in dark flames. He wonders if he would become an et, and if he would be able to interact with humans, but decides that it is better to avoid it. It could be another prank from the annoying voice. The second option is the Rolling Dragon specialized in speed instead of strength, the sprinter of the dragon world. He imagines himself rolling from one side to the other and doesn't get very excited. The third option is the small light-type bow dragon with high intelligence and user of white magic. He finds it hard to believe that a plague dragon could evolve into something as pure as it would be small. Perhaps it would be weaker than the others, but still it seems like a good choice. The last option is Jermungande, a dragon with the body of a gigantic snake covered in scales that contains deadly poison where it crawls. The ground becomes stereo. It denies immediately if he chose this, he would become the enemy of all humans. At that moment, Miriam pokes him and points ahead. He approaches and finds a lake while she drinks water. He returns to reflecting on the evolutions. The last one is totally out of the question. He is interested in the rolling dragon, but is afraid of becoming a traveling circus show. So he thinks about the guy's little air dragon light that could perhaps get along well with humans. On the other hand, the dragon, if dark human, being half human, would perhaps be the best option to live with them. But then another doubt arises, such as Miria would see, and if he chose something so different, how the other monsters would treat him. Miriam goes to him and asks him what he is thinking. He gets scared and falls back, thinking he was thinking about what it would be like his life as a human. If he chose some of the other dragon evolutions, he tells her that in any case, he is about to evolve into another monster. But which one does she think is better? But clearly, she doesn't understand what he is saying. He thinks he would really like her view on this subject. She points at him and makes a dragon roar. He asks if she is talking about him, and she confirms. She introduces herself as Miria, and he can understand. He wonders if he is able to understand some basic things. Because his ability has evolved from level, Miria begins to point towards some things and say the name. She goes to the water and starts playing with him. The divine voice warns that the language skill has gone from level 2 to level 3. Later, Mira starts to explain that is looking for someone, and went to the forest many times alone without Miss Marielle knowing. Our protagonist thinks she is looking for those people who went to the cave. He tries to talk to her, but she doesn't understand anything. He thinks that thanks to his ability, he can understand more or less what she is saying, but the opposite doesn't work. He makes a strange gesture, and Miria can understand, saying that these are adventurers from the city, but he is not looking for them. He is looking for Dose. Our protagonist thinks he was killed by the stone dragon. He leaves weeds on her head to fake Dose's hair, and Mira is surprised that he knew Dose, who knew he was the dragon who saved her back then. She jumps up and hugs him, leaving our protagonist very happy. He apologizes to Princess Venom because he will choose to be a half-human. Mira asks him if he has a name, but he doesn't have one. He shakes his head saying no, and she wonders how she should call him. Our protagonist reflects that he never stopped to think about it. Mira asks him if it's okay if she invents a name, and he accepts, asking her to do so. She begins to reflect about the name, thinking about everything that happened and how many times he saved her. She thinks he is a hero, and gives his name out of illusion, explaining that it is the name of a flower that she likes. Our protagonist thinks it is a good name, and accepts his name as an illusion. The divine voice confirms his name as an illusion, and explains to him that after the name is confirmed, it cannot be changed. The divine voice asks again if it can confirm the name illusion, saying that after confirming it cannot be changed. Our dragon did not know it had this option. He accepts the name since it was given by Miria, and confirms. The divine voice says that the name was confirmed as an illusion. Miria comments that it seems that he liked the name and is happy about it. Our little dragon feels very well with what just happened, but at that moment there was a very loud roar, and he hears very strong footsteps approaching them. He thinks that the only thing capable of taking such a strong step in that forest is the dragon. So he asks the Mira to get on his back and starts to run away with her, thinking that he was further away from the dragon's lair, but that doesn't matter because he will make a detour to the village and will leave the scope in a safe place and then go look for us. The wolves continue following him, and he notices a reception of magical energy written on the side of the monster. He then realizes that the monster is being controlled by something. He jumps towards the media, but our protagonist manages to defeat him with a blow of his tail. Further ahead, he sees that there are 4 more wolves, but one is different. When he stops, he realizes that Deuce is on top of the wolf. Different, Miria asks Deuce why he is with monsters. Our protagonist tries to see Deuce's statistics, but the list of his skills are completely empty, and he wonders what that means. He pulls out a sword and starts trying to attack them. He comes forward, but when our protagonist realizes that it will be, when attacked, she defends herself and tries to attack her with a sword, and she retaliates with a fireball. Our protagonist punches him, and he falls, but our protagonist finds his reaction strange when he holds a piece of earth as if it were a treasure, and Miria wonders how this happened. Dose orders the wolves to attack, and he obeys. At that moment, the strong footsteps continue to get closer and closer. Dose climbs on top of a wolf and orders it to move forward, and Miria finally realizes what the egg is that he is holding. The dragon realizes that he is heading towards the village and wonders what he is doing. Whatever, because she can't understand it, but Miria understands, saying it's horrible. But what he was holding was a stone dragon egg, and he is taking it to the village so the stone dragon will go there. At that moment, the stone dragon appears enraged and realizes that Dose is attracting the dragon to the village. Miria climbs on our dragon's back and he starts running after Dose to be able to avoid the tragedy, asking if what Dose is planning to do if he wants revenge against the people of the village. The wolves continue chasing them both, and our dragon knows he won't be able to lose them with Miria on his back. At that moment, Emilia calls for him, Elucia asking him to leave her behind and continue without her, explaining that she will be able to stay well away from the monsters and asking him to follow her. And he asks if she has gone crazy because there is no way they beat the wolves. But Miria begs him to save the village. He suddenly puts her on the ground and is attacked by the wolf. He retaliates with a very strong blow, then delivers a follow-up of blows and destroys the wolf completely. 3 remaining wolves run towards Miria. He defeats 2, but the third manages to injure her. But soon after, our protagonist manages to defeat him too. Miria asks him to run to the village and he says he will protect it, but also states that he will protect the village in the village. We see some children playing. Ingrid tells them to go home because it is starting to get dark. Soon after, we hear the roar of the stone dragon and several birds start to fly. Scared Marielle hears the roar and thinks she needs to quickly find the ones. Adventurers also take down some wolves in the forest. The scene changes to the Dose that continues running with the baby dragon's egg towards the village in the forest. We also see the slimes that our protagonist faced previously. Our protagonist continues running towards the village. Then we see our dragon running towards the village with Miria on its back, seriously injured. She realizes that Eluvia is taking her to the village and is grateful for that. The dragon observes the injury and thinks that it doesn't seem that serious, believing that she will be able to heal herself. However, when Miria uses a recovery spell, she decides to use it on him. Upon realizing this, our little one dragon is surprised and thinks that she is actually a very kind person. Meanwhile, in the village, Gregory is facing a wolf and, confused by the situation, asks what is happening, but even so, he manages to defeat the creature. Soon after the fight, our dragon arrives at the village, carrying Miria on his back. Upon seeing the huge dragon, Gregory is completely terrified. However, he quickly explains that this is a friendly dragon and that he came to save the village. Upon hearing this, Gregory remembers when he saw a small dragon carrying Miria on its back earlier and begins to wonder if that one would be the same. At that moment, our protagonist also finds his face familiar and remembers that it was Gregory who hit him with a wedge in the past. Mira then confirms that it really is the same dragon, just evolved. Now he has become a plague dragon, but despite this, he continues to be very kind and friendly towards humans. Gregory then realizes that, from the another time, the dragon was just trying to help Miria, but he still finds it hard to believe that a plague dragon can help humans. Still, he decides to apologize for what happened. Previously, since there was no way to know the truth in that situation, our protagonist responds by just shaking his head, and Gregory is completely shocked to realize that the dragon can respond and communicate with humans. At that moment, a terrifying roar echoes in the distance. It was the stone dragon. Upon hearing the sound, Miria asks Gregory if he saw. Gregory replies yes, saying that he threw something at him and then ran away alone. Mira then explains that 2 is planning to lure that stone dragon using an egg as bait and that they need to find him as quickly as possible. Gregory decides to offer to go along with the dragon, for if the villagers saw a dragon wandering alone through the village, they would certainly panic. Meanwhile, elsewhere, an old man wonders what strange sound he just heard until he sees two and quickly warns them, residents, that what he said was true. Two were still alive. Returning to the protagonist, he runs through the village, leaving all the residents shocked by his presence. But the panic slows down when they realize that Gregory and Miria are on the dragon's back. Gregory then asks if anyone saw two, and one of the men responds that he was seen running towards the watchtower. They hear more noises coming from the stone dragon, and Gregory comments that the situation is getting worse as the monster is approaching quickly, so they need to find two as soon as possible. He asks for Miria to leave it in his and the dragon's hands, and asks her to evacuate everyone to the west side of the village, explaining that she is already injured and that if she goes with them, she will only put herself in more danger. Our dragon agrees, as he also doesn't want to put Miria at risk. So she accepts the decision, gets off his back, and asks them both to be careful. Soon after, the protagonist continues in search of two. On the way, Gregory comments that it is absurd that little dragon has transformed into a powerful plague dragon in such a short time, saying that he has heard stories about monsters that get bigger strong over time, but never imagined that this could happen so quickly. He adds that, after they resolve that situation, he intends to officially present it to all the residents of the village. Upon hearing this, the protagonist becomes very happy and starts to think that Gregory is really a good man. Meanwhile, in the watchtower, we see two surrounded by the villagers who ask for him lower the sword. A little boy hiding behind a box asks, scared, what is happening to two? At that moment, the dragon arrives at the place and one of the residents asks, confused, what is happening? Gregory explains that the dragon is an ally and that they must take care of two for now, ordering all ordinary residents to evacuate immediately because a stone dragon is coming in. Towards the village, the villagers start to run, but the little boy remains hidden behind the box. Suddenly, two advances against Gregory and pushes him to the ground, trying to do the same to the protagonist. But the dragon manages to stop him easily, and soon after, lands a punch that knocks him down. Our protagonist prepares to deliver the final blow, but hesitates when he realizes that if he kills a human, he will become a true monster. Instead, he asks two to drop the weapon and just flick at Gregory. Upon seeing that, comments in surprise that he really is the little dragon from before. However, at that moment, two awakens and quickly jumps back. The protagonist tries to analyze his status and notices that they are similar to forest wolves, which seems very strange to him. Two then takes out his sword and notices the little boy hiding behind the box. Without hesitation, he grabs him and does it. Hostage. Our protagonist realizes that there is not much he can do at that moment and begins to wonder what the best decision would be, as the stone dragon could arrive at any moment and at any time. A rash movement will make Dois kill the boy. Then, Two throws his sword on the ground, picks up the dragon egg, and throws a slime to the top of the watchtower, climbing shortly after. The protagonist is confused, as he first noticed Two's abnormal statuses and now that strange ability. Shortly after, the stone dragon finally arrives at the location. Two lifts the egg to the top of the tower, and Gregory finds himself asks if he intends to break it. Our protagonist tries to fly there to stop him, but Two throws the little boy from the top of the tower without thinking twice. The dragon runs to save him and succeeds. Catch it in time, but it's too late to stop Two, who jumps from the tower as the egg breaks right in front of the stone dragon. The creature immediately goes into a state of rage. Mariana, who was elsewhere, wonders what that sound was and decides to return to the village. Upon arrival, she finds Miria and is relieved to see that she is safe. Mariana asks what is happening, and Miria explains that Two attracted a stone dragon there. Soon after, Two starts to move strangely, but ends up being brutally trampled by the stone dragon enraged. Meanwhile, our protagonist realizes that the little boy is fine. Gregory runs to them, and the dragon hands the boy to him, asking them to leave immediately. Gregory asks what he intends to do, and the dragon responds that he will fight the stone dragon. When observing the creature's statistics, our protagonist notices something alarming. The stone dragon is much stronger than the creature, what he imagined. And even though he realizes that the enemy is extremely powerful, he thinks that at least he can buy time so that everyone can escape safely. With this objective in mind, he advances against the stone dragon, taking advantage of the opening. He counterattacks with his dragon punch, but to his surprise, the blow causes absolutely no damage. Without giving up, he tries to use the skill Baby's Breath, but the result is the same, no effect on the enemy. Determined to try again, he uses Meteorite, but again the attack fails to hurt the stone dragon. Before he can react, the creature counterattacks with full force and hits him, causing our protagonist to fall violently to the ground. Fallen, he begins to wonder if this means the end for him. However, at that exact moment, an arrow hits the stone dragon. It was Gregory, who had returned accompanied by 2 more villagers to help in the fight. Gregory caught the stone dragon's attention, creating an opening for the protagonist, who quickly gets up and lands a strong kick on the creature's neck. Soon after, one of the villagers makes a precise shot and hits an arrow directly in the creature's neck. Eye of the Dragon. Our protagonist thinks that they have finally managed to do some damage to the enemy, and full of hope, opens his statistics list to check the results of the attacks. Looking at the dragon's life bar, he notices something frightening. Almost none of the creature's HP has been reduced. Without giving them time to reorganize themselves, the stone dragon uses the tremor skill. The impact is devastating, eliminating one of the villagers instantly and leaving the other 2 seriously injured. Then the creature strikes with its tail, hitting the protagonist and throwing him. Again against the ground, our little dragon realizes that at this rate, everyone will end up losing the battle, as the difference in power is simply too great. At this critical moment, a divine voice echoes in his mind, ordering him to flee immediately. Soon after, a notification appears indicating that the divine voice has evolved from level 3 to level 4, now allowing the use of a new function called Simplified Laplace Simulator. Confused, our protagonist begins to wonder what exactly the divine voice is trying to tell him. The voice responds that he will not run away, no matter how much she insists, and says that he was an exception to the rule in many ways, but that it is unfortunate that it is precisely there that they need to part. Angry, the protagonist asks if it evolved just to say that load of nonsense. The voice replies that it never got tired of watching him and asks him to rest in peace. Confused and irritated at the same time, the little dragon asks who the divine voice really is, but receives the answer that no explanations will be provided on level 4. Realizing that the situation is desperate, he decides to resort to his last feature, evolution. Remember, there are 4 different evolutions you can choose from, and start asking yourself which one would give you the greatest chance of beating the Earth Dragon. It breaks down each of the 4 possible evolutions, thinking about the benefits and abilities that each form could grant, while trying to decide which one would be most likely to lead him to victory. A severe headache arises. Suddenly, he notices that all of his MP appears to have been drained. The divine voice then informs him that he has been given the title of Laplace Authority Interference and begins to present predictions about each of the evolutions. She explains that if she evolves into a light dragon, she will only have a 4% chance of winning the battle and less than a 1% chance of saving all of her allies. Then it says that if it evolves into Dragomand, there is a 91% chance that the battle will end in a draw, but also a 94% chance that the entire village will be completely destroyed. If you choose to evolve into a rolling dragon, your chances of victory will be less than 1%. However, there will be a 99% chance of being able to escape the battle. Our protagonist falls to the ground completely exhausted and begins to wonder why the divine voice is giving so many predictions. Angry, he calls the voice stupid. At that moment, an intense light begins to emanate from his body. Returning to the adventurers, Yuno hears a very loud noise coming from the village, and Hamult asks everyone to hurry up when they return to the village. Marielle comments that the stone dragon is going crazy and asks if everyone has already been evacuated. Emilia replies that not yet. Marielle then asks about Gregory, and a villager explains that he and the others said they would try to stop the stone dragon. Arielle decides to go there to support Gregory and asks Miria to take care of the villagers, but Miria refuses, stating that she will go with her. Meanwhile, returning to Eleusia, the adventurers wonder what to do. He thinks about evolving into a bow dragon to heal Gregory, but he remembers the voice saying that the chance of winning is only 4%, and that the chance of saving his allies is lower than 1%. Even so, he jumps into the air, uses his ability to roll and attacks the Earth Dragon, immediately going to check if Gregory is okay. Eleusia asks Gregory to wait a little, saying that it will evolve and then heal him. However, at that moment, Gregory holds his hand and asks him not to worry about him. Gregory then asks what reason Eleusia would have to help the humans, since he can't think of any. Still, there is one thing he is sure of. The dragon is not using its true power. Gregory asks the dragon to feed on him, explaining that he is a plague dragon and will get stronger if he eats people. Our dragon responds that he doesn't eat people, and that the only way for him to get stronger is through evolution. He remembers something in his evolution tree. The young plague dragon was the first stage of the evil dragon, the one that spreads disasters. Correct path, and that's why he could still go back. That's how he inherited the title of Baby Hero Dragon and even managed to evolve into a light dragon. Gregory comments that even after Illusia having helped Mira, he still stabbed him with a spear, and yet now he is fighting a stone dragon to help humans. The protagonist then thinks that everything he wanted was for humans to accept him as the hero of the village. Gregory says that he really isn't a monster like the others, but that's precisely why he can't beat the stone dragon. Gregory then guides the dragon's claws to his neck and asks him to protect the village. The protagonist begins to cry, but ends up cutting Gregory's neck. Soon afterwards, the divine voice announces that the title of evildoer has increased from level 4 to 5, the title of calamity has increased from level 3 to 4, and the title of swindler king has increased from level 1 to 2. The divine voice then announces that he has gained a new evolution, plague dragon, rank B, and evil. Dragon that brings disaster wherever he goes and has already destroyed many human villages. Wherever he goes, he leaves a mountain of corpses and is considered one of the 3 great monsters of the calamity. Even so, he chooses to evolve into a plague dragon and begins his evolution. The villager who was with him and Gregory, upon seeing that transformation, he begins to run in terror. In his thoughts, the protagonist tells Gregory that he will make sure to protect the village and that he will be able to do this thanks to the sacrifice of Gregory. The battle between the two then begins. Even after evolution, our protagonist realizes that the stone dragon is still extremely heavy and concludes that he cannot beat it in a direct dispute of strength. Thinking quickly, he begins to flap his wings with force, lifting the enemy's body and taking both of the dragon's feet off the ground. Then, he takes advantage of the opening to launch an attack with the claws. After the blow, he retreats a little, but the earth dragon advances furiously towards him. Still, the protagonist feels that he now has a real chance of winning. Meanwhile, returning for Miria, she is looking for Gregory and Illusia. Marielle is also worried and wonders where the stone dragon went. At that moment, the villager who had fled appears running. Completely terrified, Marielle asks where Gregory and Illusia are. The villager, completely desperate, falls to the ground. He then takes the two to Gregory's body and, says that a black dragon killed him. Mariella asks if it was the plague dragon that Miria brought there, and the villager confirms, saying that he saw the dragon cut off Gregory's head, and that, soon after that, he became even bigger. Marielle asks if the dragon evolved. The villager says he doesn't know for sure, but claims he headed east while fighting the stone dragon. Miria says the villager's story can't be true. Marielle asks her to calm down, as now there are most important things to do. She asks Miria to take care of the villagers and thinks that the village is doomed. If the plague dragon and the stone dragon return there, returning to the protagonist, we see that the battle remains intense. He deals several blows to the stone dragon, but the enemy manages to return much of the damage. Illusia uses the whirlwind cut, a newly acquired skill. Then, he opens his status and realizes that he has another ability that he had never seen before. When he returns to paying attention to the fight, he is almost hit by an attack, but manages to dodge it at last. He then realizes that none of the blows he landed caused much damage to the stone dragon's HP and begins to wonder if it has any weak points. Thinking about this, he concludes that the stone dragon's body, the dragon is extremely tough, so perhaps its weakness is in its head. He then charges at the stone dragon and delivers a powerful dragon punch directly to its head, continues the attack with a blow of its tail. In the third attack, it finally manages to crush one of the stone dragon's eyes. Illusia thinks that now that the dragon can't see clearly, it will be easy win the battle. However, the dragon starts running desperately towards the village. Illusia quickly gets in front of him and says that he won't be able to get past there. Meanwhile, in the village, we have Miria helping the villagers together with Mariella. The elf asks a villager to gather everyone who can still move and leave the village immediately. Looking back, she calls for Miria, but realizes that she is no longer there and imagines that she has gone after the plague dragon. Back in the fight, Illusia manages to hold the stone dragon to prevent it from advancing towards the village, but ends up becoming vulnerable to attacks. The dragon begins to headbutt him several times, pushing him back. Then, Illusia begins to flap her wings, spreading the dragon's scale powder throughout the area, which begins to affect the stone dragon. Observing the enemy better, he notices that the dragon's neck appears thinner than the rest of the body and concludes that that must be its weak point. He then begins to deliver several concentrated blows to the dragon's neck and activates the neck breaker ability. Finally, the attack works, and he manages to defeat the stone dragon, which falls heavily to the ground. The divine voice announces that he has received 384 experience points, and which, thanks to the title of Baby Gold, received Outbolt. Double with this, the plague dragon rises from level 1 to level 19. Sometime later, Miria arrives at Illusia and calls out to him. She asks if he still recognizes her and says that he defeated the stone dragon. Finally, she asks if he has evolved again, as he is now much bigger. The protagonist then remembers that killed Gregory and that turned into that monstrosity. At that moment, Marielle arrives and fires a blow of light at the dragon. Miria immediately puts herself in front and tells Marielle to stop. She explains that that is Illusia, the dragon she had spoken about before Marielle responds that Gregory was killed by that monster. Illusia turns to Illusia and asks if that is true. Even without receives an answer, she continues in front of him and says that there must be some mistake. However, at that moment, the dragon scale powder begins to affect Miria, and Lucia then realizes that she has transformed into a true monstrosity, something that can no longer remain close to humans. Then, it flies away, while Marielle uses healing magic on Miria. Soon after, our dragon stops near a lake and looks at his own reflection in the water. When he sees himself, he comments that it looks incredible, as if it were a tank. Then, he thinks that his entire body is rigid and wonders if he shouldn't have some kind of automatic recovery. At that moment, he notices a flower in front of him. When he takes a closer look and looks at his statistics, he sees that the name of that flower is Illusia, the reason why he received his name. He then remembers the guardian explaining that that flower only blooms in places where monsters live. For this reason, it is very difficult to harvest, being considered an excellent gift. Language of flowers, it symbolizes courage and bravery, representing the symbol of heroism. Upon realizing this, he begins to cry and asks the divine voice to erase his name. However, the voice responds that, after a name is confirmed, it can no longer be changed. Desperate, he throws himself into the ground, cursing himself as a big idiot and wondering what he was trying to become. He also begins to question why he was taken to that world. Suddenly, he begins to hear a sound nearby to him, but says he doesn't care about anything anymore. It's exactly at this moment that the episode comes to an end. If you've made it this far, comment on the word evolution to show that you watched until the end.